Hello and welcome to the Hidden Home Technology Podcast. Today is the first episode of many. We have upcoming episodes with lighting designers, lighting suppliers, hi-fi suppliers, hi-fi manufacturers, well, you name it, it's coming up. The idea behind the podcast is to show the depth and breadth of what Hidden Home Technology has to offer. We're a company offering everything from CCTV and entry systems and computer networking through to interior design, lighting design, incredibly high-end audio, six-figure cinema rooms, acoustic design, you name it, we do it. If it's home and technology, home and luxury, home and design, that's us. In future episodes, we have Lighting of London, who supply lighting or manufacture lighting products, and also offer lighting design services to work in conjunction with ours. We have Niall Hunt from Inuus. They specialize in digital streamers. We have Meridian Audio, who design and manufacture high-end hi-fi products in the UK, based in Cambridge. And many, many more. But today we have Matt Peddle, the audio agent. He's been in the industry, the hi-fi industry, for, I think, as long as I have, 20-something years. And has recently moved from Fine Sound, who were Macintosh, Sonos, Faber, to being independent, and now represents an awful lot of really, really cool, interesting brands that both he and I are getting to know. So today, I guess, is an introduction to Matt, what I can now offer as well, and specifically a couple of products that we'll come on to later. So hello, Matt.
Hi, Dan.
Yeah, tell me about yourself. Well, tell them about yourself.
Well,
yeah.
I say I started in the hi-fi industry 20 odd years ago. That's when I had hair. And I've worked on the retail side of things. So for custom installation experts like yourself, Dawson's down in Bournemouth, which also had a Bang & Olufsen franchise. So selling some... Yeah. So selling high-end luxury audio, video products is from the retail perspective, I've got an understanding of. I then moved from there to the Cord Company, selling cables. I was there for nearly 10 years as they grew the business in the UK. And it's a company that's still very close to my heart and still got friends there.
They're
great product and brand, etc. And then my journey took a slight course in a different direction, from a relatively small company to one of the largest in the industry at Bowes & Wilkins.
Yeah.
I was there for 4 years and through the transitions of different ownerships and growth. Yeah. And it was, that was certainly an interesting time and learned a lot about the industry.
That
about
would have
myself.
been in the B&W heyday as well.
Yeah, just towards the end of the heyday. Yeah. And, I think it's still a very, very strong brand, and it's a brand the industry needs to thrive and to do well because it's one of the most recognised brands globally.
Yeah.
And a strong Bowes & Wilkins, same with things like Name Audio, all of those.
Yeah.
With
I guess that's why I
people.
have my sort of brand racism with B&W, because everyone knows it, everyone assumes it's the best, and therefore you're immediately on a back foot, which gets drummed into you, then you automatically go on a back foot. But it's great stuff.
It is great stuff. They make world-class products still. The engineers and acousticians over at Southwater or Stelling, as it was, phenomenally talented.
So the designer of the original Snail Nautilus met him the other day because he is now he's now what's a company now, because I deal with them as well.
Vivid,
that's it. So I was listening to their new Gaias, the huge ones. They're unbelievably good. But met him. He's a really interesting character, and again great because he's completely uncommercial, almost like the antithesis of B&W. So it's great to have met him and given some heritage or like a kind of understanding really of how that Nautilus design came about and giving it some context. That's the word I was looking for. It's really cool to see the person that imagined that.
It's great.
And then to see him thriving in his own environment by himself. It's brilliant. And the product, they're being blunt, they're quite a sight. They're putting it tactfully. The Gaias, they are monoliths. And from the front, they're, I don't know, they almost seem like unnecessarily large, but as you walk around them and see them in 3D, they become an awful lot less ugly. Because you realise the whole sides are sculpted a little bit Nautilus-y. And they are just bass drivers bottom to top, because he didn't want this, You get a non-linearity, I think, on a voice coil running through
Yeah.
a magnet when it has long excursions, so subwoofers and things suffer from it.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the drivers from the tweeter through the mid-range, through the woofers, through the subwoofers are all designed to stay in very short throw.
Mm.
So to do that, they needed 8 12-inch drivers per speaker. So it's mental. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I've not had a chance
in
to
Munich,
see
they shook the concrete floor, but not in that boomy way.
Yeah.
You were sort of unconscious of the bass, but it's just coming through the. It was unbelievable.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I've not seen them physically. I've obviously seen photographs and things. So maybe we'll get to hear them next year at
cool.
Munich.
Anyway, back to you and B&W.
Yes, yeah. So I've worked on both the custom install side of the business, so in ceiling and wall and cinema product for Bowers and Wilkins, and then also on the more residential or hi-fi orientated products. So classic 800 series diamond stuff and 700 and 600, which say is still brilliant product. It's a brand that everyone is familiar with, that has an interest in hi-fi, and say having a strong Bowers and Wilkins, Kef name, whichever, is really important for our industry, because it still breeds interest and brings people in to also experience other new brands like the ones I'm now looking after.
Yeah.
But going back a step from Bowers, they moved on from Bowers to Fine Sounds UK, which was back in 2020 was a brand new business, started in September. I joined in the following February.
Yeah.
And we went from here to here in a very short amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Growing the business through the UK quite significantly. So that was looking after Macintosh and Sonos Faber.
Yeah.
So Mac is another brand that globally has a huge impact. It's hugely respected.
Yeah.
UK, it was still very new to the UK, even though it's an old brand.
Yeah.
So the growth that we saw with Macintosh interest was significant.
Yeah, well, again, that's a little bit like the B&W thing, but perhaps not the same. I didn't have the same preconceptions, and also there's another sort of backstory to why I kind of like fell out of instantaneous joy with B&W. I'll bore people with that another time. But I had like sort of connotations of the Macintosh brand again of perhaps being maybe lifestyle to some degree.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just like it was trading on a brand perhaps or something like that, or an image rather than a sound quality. But now having taken on Macintosh, because I figured the brand awareness might work in my favor and I was seeing good press and things like that, having taken it on, my opinion has just entirely changed. And I absolutely think it's world class.
Yeah.
The MA12000 I've lived with now in our listening room, which is also my living room, which means I listen to it every night for hours, because it's either TV or it's audio, is just astonishing. And the more I play with it, the more I manipulate it, like bypass the preamps, use the power amps, I understand how good the power amps are, but also how good the preamp is.
Yep.
And then with a couple of clients recently that have got astonishingly ridiculous systems, into the pushing £100,000 systems, it's not bad either.
No.
And then seeing the trade shows, okay, there's things at play at trade shows that can mean that one room doesn't sound as good as it should, but it's an even playing field to some degree. Obviously, chance with room dimensions, maybe not, but having heard is it Stradivarius or Stradivarius? With some fairly big amplification and, decent front ends at Munich, it was one of the best rooms. Without splitting hairs, it was one of the best rooms. And then also hearing the huge Ultimas or whatever they're called.
Supremas.
Supremas in the hotel, which happened to be the hotel I was staying in.
Very nice.
Was just mind blowing. That was the best thing at the show for whatever reason.
I remember phoning me afterwards.
Exactly. I was phoning everyone immediately, just going mind blown. It was like the room was huge. And it didn't struggle. And yet you see it in more modest rooms like the Sonos Faber head office and things like that. And clearly it mustn't struggle there or it wouldn't have been designed in that room. It's just phenomenal. So Macintosh and also bringing on Sonos Faber to some degree. But Sonos Faber, again, I have a different emotional attachment to.
I think it's, Mac, the history behind Macintosh is significant. I mean, they powered Woodstock.
Yeah, it's a cool narrative.
Grateful Dead Wall of Sound. The townhouse they got in New York is really cool. It's all about experience. And I agree to a degree. I agree with your point of it's sort of a lifestyle brand. I would say there are a number of audiophiles that will appreciate it and use it as their system, but it is quite a lot of people that like nice things.
Yeah.
we'll go
Yeah,
with
but that's not
Macintosh
a
as
bad
well
thing,
because it's a good well-known brand.
One thing you realise when you go deep into the hobby is pretty much everything relies on differences.
Mhm.
You know, it's not so much better
Yep.
or worse, it's differences and suiting those differences to the layers of products in the system. You know, your sources
Yep.
to your amplifiers to speakers, and system to room, but then whole system and room to person and personal taste. So
Yeah.
after a while, you start realising that there are many best alternatives, and
Absolutely.
it's a case of navigating those. And one of the elements that make it a best product for a person is a desire to own it.
Mhm.
And that might come from aesthetic. It might come from, like I said, maybe like a childhood lust in a magazine over a particular brand, which is the Sonus Faber for me.
Yeah.
So you have this like as an additional little element that is the icing on the cake to owning or purchasing.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think that obviously that can be positive or negative, like with B&W with me. I don't think I'd ever own one because I've just got that. The long story then is I went in for a demo of these 601s or whatever they were, 602s that were five-star hi-fi products, spending my student loan. I was just so disappointed it was untrue. So I kind of then sort of thought, oh, it's all hype. And that just stuck. So the hype, and then when people say, oh, they're the best, and I'm like, well, no, clearly, because at £250, they're not the best. I found other things.
I mean, I think that's one of the joys with this industry that, I mean, years ago, yes, there probably were a number of poor products, but nowadays it's, you're doing pretty well to produce something that's below average.
Yeah, or at least getting it to market, getting it past the thing, because it's such stiff competition from so many brands.
There's so much more technology out there. There's more ways of analysing the same conditions of the speaker.
There is possibly, I wouldn't know, but I would say there's probably more help in the design process from computers and technology, and also paths already trodden by other manufacturers to know that.
I mean, Bowers and Sonus Faber use FEA, which is finite element analysis, which looks at the vibration points in the cabinet. So computer models how the cabinet resonance or internal resonance affects the speaker.
Presumably before you've even made it as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So having a more in-depth understanding of the build and the structure of a cabinet prior to actually delivering the cabinet as a product gives you so much more information, producing a better quality product.
Yeah, I've noticed even in the 20 years evolution in the industry, how manufacturing tolerances have like improved to the point, you know, maybe it's like miniaturization or whatever, but other things is just literally just the tolerances of cabinet manufacturing and driver manufacturing and things like that.
There's lots of things, there's lots of elements.
Reliability's gone up as well.
Yeah, reliability is much higher. The quality of components is better. Because people are able, they're in a position where they can invest more in a component because they're buying a greater volume of them. Therefore, the products by default become better. The other thing I think that Sonus Faber has actually hit the nail on the head with recently is ever since the COVID, essentially, ever since COVID, the people's expectations of their product at home has risen.
Yeah, in
terms of visual aesthetic, performance, people are willing to invest more in luxury goods.
Yes.
And luxury goods I'm not saying it's got to be £20,000 speakers. For some people, a luxury good would be something like the little Lumina bookshelf that's £800.
Yeah, 100%.
Wrapped in leather.
All of it is a luxury to someone, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think with the way the market's going, say the creating aspirational brands and products, someone like Sonus Faber, etc., are doing very well with that, because it's putting them at the top of the list when you make an investment that you get great value for money, not just sonically but visually as well. And I think again, there's a higher across the board within the industry. There's a higher expectation in terms of design as well.
Well, I think that's where our branding for our company, and not just branding, I suppose, but the whole ethos and philosophy of our company, where we would design the entire room and the system into the room, both performance and aesthetic.
Absolutely.
And you know, we do acoustic treatment, but not with the typical kind of panels, unless that did suit the aesthetic. You know, we'd hide it behind sumptuous fabrics and things like that, so you wouldn't even know it was there. And again, that's another element where computer modeling and stuff has come in and made it easier to become an amateur acoustician, if that's a word. And then also then from that, like basic foundation with the availability of information online and some amazing experts online. There's Yes Go at Acoustic Insider on YouTube, highly recommended. Really does. It just makes it very simple to understand what you're up against with acoustics, and therefore the best possible practical solutions and how to not mess it up, because it's pretty easy to mess up. But yeah, so we're designing, going back to that, the whole thing of what it looks like, the luxury element. Absolutely. People's expectations now are that their interiors would be, like you say, highly luxurious, and we don't want to come and plonk a big hi-fi in that is in any way negative to that environment. We'd find ways to bring it in,
enhance it,
and enhance it. Not just by bringing music into the environment, which obviously enhances it, but then somehow managing to crowbar in the ginormous amplifiers and things like that in a way that is actually beautiful. It might be sculptural. It might be quite imposingly sculptural as well at times, but we find a place where that is right.
Absolutely.
And there's also such a wide plethora of products that sometimes they don't have to be huge. Hats off to Mola and Grim for that. They've cornered that market.
There's lots of great stuff out there that will fit into anyone's home in some way, shape or form. It's something that your customer, customer environment, so you can then choose or suggest which products are the ones to go in that
Some
location.
Some of the speakers that we've managed to make invisible in people's houses is unbelievable. Like stuff you just wouldn't believe, like £50,000 worth of speakers
disappear.
Gone.
And I think that's, again, also credit to the manufacturers to
crowbar into the cabinets that you can hide.
But they're also the way they communicate that as well. I think there's a lot of kudos needs to be given to many of the brands. Andy Kerr at Bowers and Wilkins, with the way he will portray the product, explain how it all works, how it functions, that in a very layperson's manner. I think that's the other thing that this industry has always been very bad at, is communicating a message, because it comes very technical.
I think there's many aspects to the enjoyment of the hobby though, and some of them are really dull. And they're for people who are into it to discuss amongst themselves, and that is probably the driving factor behind the hobby, because without the dull, you don't get the exceptional performance.
Absolutely.
But to the layperson that you just want to introduce the hobby to, because they didn't realize it existed, if you started with that, you just simply you would not get the custom.
No.
So you do need to start with the joy and the design and the luxury and the aesthetic.
I think the brands are getting better at that. And I say, Jack at Kef, Jack Otley Brown, he's again phenomenal.
Well, I'm going to bring it back to you, Martin.
Martin.
Martin. Of a company that have made a speaker look incredible with a story. Tell me about them, because they're new to me, really.
So Martin's a brand it's owned by some brothers that essentially want to create an audio brand in Sweden. Everything is hand-built, hand-created in Sweden. They use a lot of the materials they have within the speakers are not unique, but they're not widely used. So a lot of the drivers are ceramic-based, where normally you look at other brands and it's a aluminium driver or a plastic driver or paper pulp or something. So ceramic gives you a nice, clean, consistent push-pull effect. The tweeters, they will use a mix as well. So the higher end stuff, it's a diamond tweeter. So again, that gives you the optimal high frequency headroom.
B&W.
But I mean, it's again, going back to technology, a lot of these speakers, a lot of the manufacturers, the concept of a speaker is always going to be the same. It's moving air in and out in a timely and consistent manner. And whichever material you use, no one's right, no one's wrong.
No, 100%. And again, I'm massively of this thing of, that you can talk about a driver material and you often get these people pigeonholing it to have a sound, but it absolutely doesn't, because if I think of B&W's tweeter, I think of it being quite harsh. Whereas in coming back to what we talk about later, but the Parker Diamonds that we've just been listening to for, what turned into 40 minutes, meant to have been 5 minutes so we could get here on time, but they were good. Completely the opposite. If there's anything pronounced in that speaker, it's actually down in the mid range. It's absolutely not forward or harsh. It is very natural.
So I mean, I'm fortunate now, looking after quite a number of brands. I've essentially got two sides of my business, that hi-fi and custom install.
Yeah.
So I look after the hi-fi side, quite a collection of brands. Gryphon, so there's the amplifiers in front of us there, as you mentioned earlier. Marten, a fantastic Swedish loudspeaker company. Their sister company, Jorma, who make cables, and a lot of the Marten speakers use Jorma cables inside. Fez Audio, which is a little Polish valve amp brand. They're relatively new.
I'm keen to.
They're relatively new to the. Well, we're the first people to bring it into the UK, and they have some lovely little integrators from about 2,500 up to about 6,500.
Yeah,
and then a series of pre-power and mono and phono stages. So it's it's a well thought out range.
They've got a big footprint already.
No, the integrators are standard width, as are the power amps and things. They're not massive. They'll do some.
So I might be able to crowbar in some monos.
Yeah. We can find space.
Monos, doesn't it? Straight for the kill.
Straight in for the big ones.
Yeah.
So I've got Fez Audio. I have Idion, which is a digital streamer.
Yeah.
So you do a streamer DAC and clock series. So again, it's not lovely little upgrade path. So you can start
big on clocking at the moment.
I've
discovered that.
I'll to loan you some of those as well.
Yeah.
We have Pink Fawn, which is another digital streamer.
Been hearing things about them.
Yeah. It's a brand that I'm learning more about. So we've got some very unique, high profile brands which are relatively newcomers to the industry, but it's something that we're taking on a bit of a journey and trying to grow. They
came up in, and I'm addicted to watching all the review channels, and I kept hearing the name come up. With some high regard as well. It wasn't sort of just sort of mentioned, but they were sort of mentioned almost as like an ultimate product, like a horrible word, reference product.
They are. Yeah. It's something that I've got to dedicate more time to. My business has literally started in the last 2 or 3 months. So
it's the hobby. I grew up. I was thinking about this last night because it's the first podcast. I was, nervous in bed thinking about it, and I was thinking about all the different brands I've worked with and owned over the years, and the list just got longer and longer and longer. And then I kind of went to Munich Hi-Fi Show because I've stayed out of shows really for a lot of the career, and only recently actually really wished I'd been going more because I really enjoyed the ones I've been to. But Munich was kind of like a baptism of fire or just straight in the deep end. It was amazing. But I was absolutely astonished by the depth of offerings. There was just brands everywhere. I went for 3 days. I was flying on 2 of those. So I only had probably 2.5 days or something, 2.25 days to get round, but I didn't touch the sides. I saw all the brands I wanted to see within reason, apart from Martin. Walked past the room, but I was on a mission to get elsewhere. I was going to say, at that point, I don't think I realised I was...
what you're missing.
What I was missing and what I had access to. So I think it's just before. So, just that depth of brand offering that I think it's fairly impossible to be an expert in all the brands.
Absolutely. I'm having a crash course on all the brands. So that's just the first few. We've got we've just secured Pathos.
Yes, again, heard of them. Never first-hand experience.
Lovely amplification. We have Estalon, which it's a very unique sculptural speaker.
Yeah. Again, I've heard of them.
Built in Estonia. Visually stunning. Beautiful finish.
Are they the sort of sculpted aluminium?
Yeah, it's ceramic.
Ceramic, is it? Okay. I actually saw that. Were they Ascot?
Yes. Yeah, we had a red pair. Diamond XBs were there.
Yes, I was chatting to the guy. I was actually
Elias.
He was lovely.
Yeah.
And they were amazing. And I took a card and he was they're
very a lovely product. I mean, again, that fits in quite nicely in the sort of world that you operate in.
Oh God, the luxury sculptural. I was saying about sculptural. Sometimes if you need to put something big in, it has to have an art kind of element. And when I say the word sculpture, I mean it. I'm not kind of clutching at straws to justify having giant things in your room.
Yeah.
They're pretty stunning.
They are stunning.
They're an amazing piece of art. Yeah.
And the concept behind it is trying to keep the cabinet shape as close to the driver positioning shape as it can do.
No engineer, but I'm definitely learning about things like baffle width and edge diffraction and curves and things like that. Or what, if you're not doing that, then you kind of need to go wide baffle with ultimately with a smooth edge after that. So, Yeah, they're very smooth and curvy, aren't
Yeah,
they?
yeah,
and
absolutely.
narrow in the high frequency areas and things like that. So
Yeah,
pretty
so
cool.
I have Estlon, we have Velodyne,
Yeah.
which again we've just taken on distribution of the in-room products, not the install, but the in-room
Are
products.
they still 99% subwoofers?
Yep, all subwoofers.
All,
They don't do
yeah.
anything else. They are pioneers of bass management.
Yeah.
They've got nearly 20 patents for technology, pioneers technology, which no other sub-brand has.
No.
They do a huge range of subwoofers from the little Micro V, Mini V, around about just £1,300. They do they start at £800 for one of the Impact models, and then go up to about $8,500 for the big flagship DD range, which again are brilliant. And
did a cinema room with 4 of the big boys in, one in each corner for
Lovely.
That was the client's doing. He owned them before. He had been collecting them over the years.
Fab.
So they're
I think the thing is as well, what we're trying to educate through my brand and the businesses I'm representing is, particularly things for Velodyne, is a hi-fi needs a sub, or should have a sub.
Yeah, that was one of my quick fire questions.
Was it? There we go.
Sub or no sub?
Yeah. So it's not just for AV. A subwoofer can be for hi-fi.
Yeah.
Because if you start taking a bit of the bass management off of your main speaker, it allows the mid-range and
that's the hard bit though,
more.
is finding a decent hi-fi product that actually has bass management in it.
Well, you can obviously, with Velodyne, you have a high-level connection, so you can take a connection off the back of your amplifier,
then go onto your speakers, so it does the bass management.
Yeah. So it's a much cleaner execution of it, and we've been playing around with having 2 or 4 subs in a hi-fi system. Yeah, double stack them, and again, the difference that makes.
Here's a technical question you may or may not, you may defer on. The extrapolation of the low frequencies and high frequencies, does that in any way involve digitizing the signal, or because it's high level it stays analog? Yeah.
So you set the crossover on the subwoofer to where you want it to fill
and the high level signal sent through that.
So it's and all the Velodyne stuff comes with a calibration system as well, so you can do room correction to it as well. So
it's done that for years, hasn't it?
They were the first ones to do it. They were pioneers of doing it. It's other brands have then caught up and done it.
So I remember going to like a CDA show, which would have been 20 years ago.
Velodyne's a brand that, say, it was huge, then it disappeared off. It's now under new ownership, and we've now taken on UK from the hi-fi perspective. Yeah, but it's a cracking brand, great product. Multi-award winning, say 19 patents.
Yeah, but I can see why they would have struggled over those last 2 decades before, where they were, again, perhaps a heyday thing where 20 years ago they're doing incredibly well.
Yeah.
Through an era of, I guess, resistance to have large boxes in living rooms and things like that. To now where there's actually I would say, or it feels like it to me anyway, maybe it's just an echo chamber effect, but I feel like that there's an increase in the number of like dedicated cinema rooms, and perhaps also a few more tools or tricks in the book from an installer perspective to hide these things. So all of a sudden it's becoming viable to have subwoofers, or imperative perhaps as well in some situations to have subwoofers back again.
Absolutely. So
I can see why
we're seeing
come back or be reinvigorated, or brands and all that sort of thing repurchased. And
absolutely. I mean, one of my retailers they sell a significant number of subs. 70% of those subs are going to hi-fi systems.
Really?
Which is,
that's interesting.
To me, it shows there's opportunities where customers should explore. I'm not saying every hi-fi system needs a sub, but try it. No,
but one thing I'm learning from acoustics is there's a lot to be said for the origin of your sub bass not being where the origin of your highs and mids are. So again, you go back to the Sonus Faber and the I'm going to get it wrong again, Supremas. That's exactly the philosophy they've done there. Is the ideal spot for your kind of mids and highs is not really the ideal spot for your bass. And
Wilson done it as well.
Wilson done it.
It just gives the system a bit more breadth. That's the word.
And I'd probably argue that even if you don't bass manage, as long as you have the tools in the book of the subwoofer, as in it's got all the adjustments required. The main one being a crossover point low enough to sit underneath your hi-fi. Absolutely.
So Velodyne, we also have B Audio, which is a great little French brand. They do digital streamers, and they do a lovely integrator called the Alpha. That's about 15,000, and then we do pre and power. It's a streaming product.
That's not messing about then.
No. We have TAD as well, which beautiful Japanese products.
Especially with the big. I say that I can't get the big speakers into our listening room, so I'm gonna have to start small. But small for them is still, significant chunk of change. One day I'd love to either go here so that I can advise people. Because I can obviously hear it before I advise it. So I'd absolutely love to.
What else we got? We got Fisher and Fisher, which are a German brand of loudspeaker. They actually made a slate, so the whole cabinet is constructed of solid piece of slate, which I heard for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and they are stunning.
Yeah, there's I don't know if it's that brand, but I've been aware of a brand that kind of basically make speakers out of rocks. And again, they've got a pretty decent. We have a couple of turntable brands as well. AMG, which is a German brand of turntables, which are beautifully engineered turntables. They are lovely. They start around about 10,000, got to about 30,000, so it's quite a high end. Are they all the kind of standard layouts, like normal pivoting arms, or are they linear tracking?
No, they're pivoting arms on those ones. And then we have Bergman, which are the linear tracking arms ones. So they do a range from around about £10,000 up to about 35.
Yeah.
So we've got two different types of deck available, and then we have Soundsmith cartridges, which it's a brand that's about 35 years old, all hand built cartridges from the US.
Oh, cool.
Very unique.
All the different types, moving magnet, moving coil.
Stereo, mono, whatever you want. It's
cool. I might chat to you about the what is it? I've got MT2, isn't it? And upgrading what's on that. Yeah. Not that I'm itching to, because actually that comes as a nice enough package. But
the upgrade to turntable as well.
Yes, that as well. I could just do the whole thing, couldn't I? It's something where I have historical knowledge of cartridges. Yeah. But we're going back to sort of Denon, I always forget the model numbers of them, but is it 109s, 30 somethings and all that kind of stuff? Yeah. The little moving coils, which Devon Turnbull from Ojas has just done his little remake clear, so you can see what's going on the inside ones. So I used to have loads of those with Gyrodecks and things like that. Riga cartridges on Riga turntables, they were, were what they were, very straightforward, very decent. A few Autofon things from the past, whether they're still current models or not, I wouldn't know. They're quite hard to experiment with because they're incredibly costly. Setup is incredibly important and time consuming. And then the way they interact with the phono stage is a big deal. So there's a lot to
there's a lot of variables in it.
To know whether you're listening to the cartridge or some other variable that isn't right or is right with that setup that isn't on another. So advice I think is the big one with that.
We can help you. I mean, so one of the other brands we've got that's kind of more for upgrades and tweaking, hi-fi tweaking, is Synergistic Research. There's a lot of mains conditioning, mains power product. They do fuses, audiophile fuses. Yeah. They do also do a lot of room acoustic and cables and ground isolation, all those sorts of things, which if you want to go down that rabbit hole, go for it.
Well, it all makes a difference. Otherwise, you wouldn't ground a product at all if grounding wasn't relatively important. So presumably, the better you do it, somehow
I think
the better the effect.
With all these things, cables, grounding devices, fuse or whatever, I could never say it's going to make this difference. It's the biggest thing is just go and try it.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. Because I would not have believed the impact of loads of the things that I hear. Yeah. And again, you're going to get me on a soapbox in a minute, just going off on one. But the more I try and measure rooms for room calibration software that's sort of included or demanded to be used by either the industry as a marketing tool or whatever. So you're calibrating AV amps and things like that. Yeah. Some of them they need to be DSP'd because you might not have a crossover in an active speaker, so you need to build that electronically in DSP land. But my point is, when you start measuring speakers and you turn off smoothing, which is what all measurements you're really seen include, you start to see that the graphs are impossible to interpret.
Yeah.
So when people say you can't measure results, I'm like, no, you just can't interpret measurements. That's the difference. Like you look at a frequency response of something. Does it change when you introduce footers or things like that? You're just never going to be able to analyze it. People say, oh, just record it and phase invert it or pass it through. It's not like that. It's the things that come through is, I don't know, I'm not even going to go down that thing. Point is, you can hear stuff you can't interpret in measurements 100%.
Absolutely. I think, you think a few years ago, Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes, that he was supposed to have the fastest car mathematically on the track. Turned out couldn't go around a corner without bouncing and bobbling all over the place. The reality is when he tried it, it didn't work as well as they thought it would do. Same with because there is that other side of measurements that, yes, they do tell you a certain amount, but what the impact of that is... The best measurement of these. And
actually, this is a really interesting one as well. So my daughter went for basically like a hearing test that played different frequencies, like specific sine wave frequencies, so different hertz, pure tones, and they turn that down until she doesn't press a button. So she presses the button when she hears it, and effectively what you realise is the frequency response of your ears is non-linear and unique to you. So one person will hear X result, and another will hear another result. So yes, for you, a flat response is a flat response, but it's not actually flat because you're then putting over the top your own sort of tonal characteristic to it. So actually, like you could even argue that perhaps you need to have that kind of level of test to then see a system that's going to produce an even response for you, which is just mad because then real life is not tonally adjusted. So if you're comparing it to real life, that's nonsense. But this is where you get these strange like contradictions in measurements and designs and stuff like that. And then if you do have a ruler flat system, it sounds god awful. So which is right? There's no such thing. I definitely accepted that. However, there are also definite categoric betters and worses. That's
completely.
Absolutely true.
It's subjective, and it's the case of, do you like band A or band B when you listen to
I mean, a
music?
good example, I'd say, I was talking about timing. We touched on it like as a passing thing earlier, but reclocking, it gives you kind of the same thing, but better. That's why we often get these reviews that say, oh, it doesn't change much. Well, maybe in a non-transparent, as in a system that's not up there in a room that has its own time problems because it's got echoes and reflections and things like that, which are effectively time problems. Not in the same way, but an example of it. As soon as you get into a decently enough system, my God, clocking makes a difference. To the solidity of the soundstage, to the kind of like tangibility of instruments or noises, if it's electronic or whatever, just how real they and solid and dense they feel in front of you, versus kind of like a bit, it's a horrible standard word, but smeared. But I'd say it's like almost like a palette knife oil painting versus a photograph. It's like it just snaps stuff into like a real thing in front of you versus a slightly shimmery thing in front of you. So there's definite rights and wrongs, betters, worses. But once you get good, there's just differences.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
other brands then.
I was going to say it's no one's right or wrong on what you feel is good and bad. I mean, if all of us in this room went out to go and buy a bottle of red wine, there's no way we'd end up with 3 identical bottles of red wine.
No, but had that bottle gone bad, you'd know about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, other brands, on the CI side, the custom install, I look after Origin Acoustics with Jamie at CAVD. That's great in-ceiling and wall brand of loudspeaker. We have audio control, Stuart film screen, JVC digital projection.
Yeah, so I've followed Jamie over the years, predominantly for Stuart. That's been his, I guess, niche in terms of, everyone offers an in-ceiling speaker, everyone offers this, but Stuart was a relatively limited and tight distribution, and I was doing Datasat as well at the time, which was Jamie, and so it made sense a lot of the time to get the Datasat and the Stuart in the same place. And Jamie's amazing.
He's
and
brilliant.
Over the years, like yourself, it's just, and I think this is part of the point of this series, is to highlight how, having been in the industry for so long, I've made an awful lot of basically friends. you do, and it shows how buying through us is effectively buying through lots of other nice people. Whereas you go to certain ways of purchase and the nice people aren't there, and it's all about money and bottom lines. Rather than the actual kind of joy of the industry and trying to pass that joy on to the client.
Absolutely. I think there's, like I said earlier, the client demand now is a high expectation in terms of performance, quality of product, visual presentation of the product,
and shopping experience, the people they deal with.
The whole experience is now really important. And whether that's the interface online, so why you started these podcasts to give people insight into the industry, all the touch points they have, whether, say, from the website, from the videos, from any physical literature you do, to the actual installation and quotation installation of the products, whether that's a £100,000 cinema or a £15,000 hi-fi, as long as the experience they're getting is quality.
The whole buying procedure as well is great or really important to that luxury effect as well, because again, dealing with someone like yourself or Jamie, the communication's so good and so first-hand, not sort of filtered through a massive multinational thing.
Although you do phone me whenever I'm on a Teams call.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, there is that. But it's still, that's exactly it. You get a WhatsApp response immediately, pretty much, and if not, there's a good reason. Whereas the communication from manufacturer all the way through to suppliers is so good in those environments that it makes the whole purchase process much better. The reason I say that is I was listening to a podcast, Diary of a CEO. It's the guy from
Stephen Bartlett.
And they were touched on one of their podcasts about the human nature of not knowing. I think they were talking about divorce and the future and the trauma of not knowing what was coming, but they were also then referred to like airports, and when you see your flight is delayed versus your flight is delayed 2 hours, or even if it said it was delayed 48 hours, that's way better than just delayed. Humans can't cope with not knowing. So we can obviously offer great communication with our clients, and dealing with nice people and small distributors aids that process.
Completely,
because you get that first-hand communication.
Absolutely.
People answer their phones. There's no hold queues. There's no. It's brilliant.
I mean, people buy from people, and the other thing that I always say to a lot of the people I work with is the art of selling isn't necessarily knowing that that amplifier has 300 odd watts of amplification in it. It's about reducing risk to the customer, making the customer trust you to make that investment in you and the products you're recommending.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that, I think, goes so much further than knowing the intricate details of how a product's designed or built.
Also, does that even matter if it sounds good? It's really interesting. Like I said, it adds to that pride of ownership thing if you understand what's going on under the hood. But it's absolutely irrelevant if the implementation of whatever technology's in there is good. That's all that matters, really.
Exactly. And so, as long as the client trusts you and you trust your suppliers, which that whole circle works. It's a fairly straightforward process from there on in, because the brands will look after me, or the distributors I work for. I look after you, and you look after the customer. It's trust. Everything is on trust, and none of us will ever put anything forward. I've even been honest to you in the past. I sell
that
this
particular product,
but don't buy that.
100%. And that's where that's been key to all of the relationships I've built. The brands that are represented in a way where that's not happening aren't brands I deal with. 100%.
Exactly.
But talking about what's going on under the hood, we may as well talk about this. So what's happening here is a couple of years back when I signed up with Macintosh, or basically signed up with Matt, I wanted the best possible thing I could fit into our listening environment, which happened to be the Macintosh MA12000, which is a very like-for-like version of this. It's loads of input, phono stages, DACs, loads of watts for what they matter.
Watts.
Loads of watts.
350 watts in a MA12000.
And loads of kilos. They're important too. Big old hulking sculptural box of hi-fi heaven. So anyway, now this has come to the forefront. not just because of Matt, but also in the press. I had awareness of Gryphon, but not any form of understanding of who they are, what they were, and what they offered. I couldn't draw a Gryphon product or anything like that. I couldn't draw the logo or anything. Now that has changed big time. There's been various people online. Terry Ellis has reviewed this, I believe, and the old one, kind of.
Hi-Fi News have just
Hi-Fi News, Jay's
glowing.
Audio Lab. He's had the big old Apex,
the Apex
in there with the Commander preamp. So loads of these things have just been, it's just been in front of me. So much so I'm now really excited because the MA-12000 I've grown to absolutely love. I'd called electronics before that, a big old integrated, similar kind of power, totally different philosophy, but nonetheless had that before. And that does something that, again, perhaps the Mac doesn't do. It's got like a transient thing, kind of electricity to the sound that's unbelievable. But overall, I think the Mac is a more joyous product to own long term. It has something.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Chord Electronics as well.
100%.
I know Colin very well.
I wouldn't
John.
be advising people away from Chord if they're Chord. They can have it.
It's a very different philosophy, and one of the big winners I think that John's made it there is the power supply, the power side of the.
Oh God, the dynamics in a Chord product, the transient response is mad.
It's brilliant. It's well engineered, and it's great product. And Mac is not the polar opposite, because that was saying it's bad, but it's a very different.
It's a different house sound, isn't it? 100%. When I first turned the Mac on, I was like, oh, but then after I was like,
Mac doesn't really add a flavour to anything, or
it's surprisingly clean.
It's very clean, very neutral. Whatever you put in, you get out of it in spades. But it's a very. I've always found the MA-12000 for me is one of the my favourite products in their range.
MA-12000 versus this, we were chatting about it earlier. I do have the one fear because the Grim MU2, which has this.
I've already got one reserved for you, so
exactly. I know, I'm having it. I'm just in denial at this stage. But the Grim MU2 is touted as not only an amazing streamer, Rune, blah blah, but also a really good preamp with a resistor ladder volume control and stuff like that. So many of the reviews have always spoken about, well, actually, if you go direct to your power amps, depending on your preamp, you get this whopping improvement. So I immediately went, the MA-12000 has those funny old jumper bars on the back, so you can effectively use off-board power amps, but I thought I'd use it ass backwards and take the preamp out and go straight into the power amps with the MU2.
Yeah.
And it is a really good preamp. The MU2 is an astonishing preamp, but the MA-12000 has the little valves in the preamp. And whether it's something else in the implementation of the preamp or not, there is this kind of gloss or lacquer to the sound that the Macintosh preamp imparts on the sound that is just astonishingly beautiful. So the MU2 was kind of like, it was more like in front of me and almost like three-dimensional. Like if you moved your head, you could look behind the stuff that was in front of you. It was there in the room, amazing. But it was also slightly devoid of that beauty, if you like, that lacquer. Like if you got a piece of wood, it's really nice, it's lovely, it's the grain, you put the lacquer on and something happens, you know.
It jumps out.
It may not be natural, but lacquer on wood still adds to that piece of wood, doesn't it? So,
absolutely.
there was something about that. So I'm now going, oh no, it's another big solid state amp and it doesn't have valves in the preamp. But from what I hear, it doesn't strip the music of its music. It still has joy. Yeah.
So there's two Diablos in the range. There's the 120 and the 333. The 333 replaced last year actually the Diablo 300, which is one of the best selling big integrators in this level of market.
Yeah.
Is real class leading and hard to beat.
Yeah.
But Runa and the team at Gryphon have brought out the 333, which has taken technology from the Apex monos, the Commander, filtered it into the 333. It's added 10% more power, so
that's important.
333 watts.
I'll play with those ones.
Yeah. It's Class A/B, so it's Class A for the first 12 or 13 watts, and then it moves across. The sonic presentation of it, to me, I mean, Roger, who I work with Gryphon here in the UK, we shared a number of retailers that had Macintosh and Gryphon on demonstration. And we almost had a bit of a league table between who was winning, who was losing. And when I was working at Fine Sounds, frustratingly, Gryphon was coming out on top quite a lot. Yeah. And now I'm wearing, I still love Macintosh, and it's still a big part of,
Well, I mean, there's big green lights on Macintosh, so that's going to like polarize some people straight away before they even start. So yeah.
But this sonically is just brilliant. They've adapted some of the input-output technology. The circuitry inside is as short as it possibly can be to basically maintain the signal path as clean as they possibly can. They've taken the speaker terminals from the Apex monos, and then on the front there's the touchscreen TFT screen as well, which again comes from the flagship Commander.
Yeah.
But overall, as a package, it's an incredible amp with plenty of power, very, very engaging.
Yeah.
Has, if you look at it as apples for apples against the Macintosh, this comes in at about 25,000 or 24,500.
Yeah.
The MA 12,000 is 18.5 now, I think, 19,000,
something like that. But in that realm, unless you're putting your life savings into it, it's
if you've got that,
you're shopping one against the other, 100%. Yeah.
With the Diablo, that comes as a bare bone system, so you have to add on a DAC or phono stage or both. Which are DACs, I think 6,500. The phono stage is 6,000, so it's quite a sizable investment to add those.
But it also means that if you've already invested in something else, you don't need to be paying for it out of the box.
Correct, and it's something that can be retrofitted. It's not a case of having to have it factory fitted day one.
Yeah.
So if later date,
the way I see those modular boards is they offer an amp for whatever the full price is. Do you say 30?
It's about 36.
36 or something. It's all singing or dancing. But if you want, you can actually have it for less because you just take things out of it. I see it as taken out rather than adding in. Yeah. As you see fit, because again, if somebody is a big analog enthusiast, the chances are, like we were saying before, they've paired a phono stage with a cartridge or a turntable, or cartridge and turntable.
Yeah.
So they may not want to dabble with that balance that they've spent ages doing, so they can save some money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take it out, and then if they change their mind, they can have it added in.
Correct.
So it's there's absolutely no downside to a modular system.
Yeah. I think visually as well, they've maintained the Gryphon design language that's been there for years, and say it's unique. I love all the heat sinks on the side here as well. It's
surprisingly smooth, aren't they? Because I was worried when we were carting the thing in that they were going to be ripping your hands apart.
Yes, but they're nice and smooth. Yeah, they're nice and smooth. The curved edges on there. The Mac ones are nice and sharp. So
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
But they're only 52 or 50.2 kilos. It's not an easy thing.
Sam, our muscular cameraman over there, picked it up like it was a feather.
Yes.
But I've seen inside, and one of the things that gets me excited is the ginormous power supply.
Yep.
Based on things like Cord Electronics and the way they feed power into their system. I know it's switch mode, it's very different, but it's still, the whole point behind the switch mode is there's constantly power on tap. And it can refresh that power much, much faster, especially if you run lots of power supplies out of sync, which is what they do. There's basically always fresh power to restore the capacitor banks should they get drained, which I think is why they say they have such great transient response. However, if you go toroidal, you get slightly slower refresh on that, so you need a huge backup.
Yeah.
And if ever I've seen a huge backup, it's inside the Gryphons.
And you picked it up as well.
Yeah, you're basically picking up a 50 kilo power supply.
Yeah, I mean,
it's casework.
It's slightly unique power supply as well, because they use it as effectively call it a dual mono power supply. So effectively there's two outputs, so one for each channel.
Yeah.
So you're not running both channels from one feed, as it were.
No,
so
looking at the back of it, the way the phono stage is laid out, and even the inputs for left and right, it looks like it's not just sort of dual mono in typology, it's physically dual mono on one chassis. It literally is like you could saw it in half and it'd still function.
I mean, it's a fantastic piece of kit. We used it. We ran an event with a friend of mine for his business. The Art of Slowdown, which was an album launch of Laura Marling's new album in London. So we did a final playback using an AMG turntable, the 333, and the Martin Parker quintets.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
In a room for 120 people in this lovely place in London, and it just worked seamlessly. You know, it didn't run out of puff. It was the it's so easy to engage with the music. The album, Laura Marting's created, was brilliant.
Yeah,
and the comments coming back from there's a number of her fans and management and label people.
Yeah,
the comment of the reproduction was.
Well,
So
my limited experience of Gryphon goes back to Munich.
Yeah.
And I will now happily list my favourite rooms in order. It was the massive Macintosh one, but that was basically £1 million in an environment that was just astonishing as well. Huge room, huge layout. So it's going to create a massive soundscape. It kind of unfair advantage. And it was acoustically treated. It's like a ballroom. That had some acoustics in it and stuff like that. I mean, so
the Supremas are just.
Well, but it had so many advantages. The room was big enough that things like room modes don't come into play. It's more like concert hall acoustics versus small room acoustics, which is like kind of classroom size or smaller. So it didn't fall into that. Didn't have those pitfalls.
Yeah.
And everything in the room was well damped because it was designed as really well designed as a ballroom and conference room. There's huge amounts of acoustic treatment in there, and it was bloody good.
Yeah.
Next was a bang for the buck room, which was the Grim Audio room. In comparison, it was peanuts. It was £50,000. That's nothing, is it? But it was about 50 grand. It was the servo, not servo assisted, but like very clever subwoofers where they put an accelerometer on the subwoofer. Okay. They look at the plot of the accelerometer versus the plot of the input signal.
Yeah.
And when that goes out of sync, they mechanically control the sub to follow the input signal, which basically going back to that non-linearity of voice calls when they're long excursion that the Vivid Gaias talk about. It's the same thing there. They're basically counteracting that non-linearity in the cock-ups when you have a long excursion on a subwoofer by putting an accelerometer on it and plotting that curve versus the input. It's brilliant. So they got these cool little subwoofers that sit on the stands. They're active speakers and a Grim MU1 streamer, and all the DACs and digital Class D amps are in the speaker stands. And wicked little system, really compact. And for what it was in most people's listening rooms, it was astonishing. The next room after that would be the Inuus room. And in the Inuus room was the Apex and Commander with, I think, a Nagra front end.
Okay.
So it'd be a Nagra DAC on the Inuus streamers into the Apex and Commander in Apex. And they had a big pair of new launch speakers that I can't remember the name of because they didn't exist before then. And I was just, I got carried away. I went in there because I know the guys quite well in US. They were pleased to see me for some reason. And it was the end of a day. So I got to literally take over the room for
brilliant.
Again, time flew.
Yeah. That's Nuno and Amelia. They're lovely.
Yeah, it was Nile as well.
Nile,
So, I got to play with that system for a bit. So that was my first experience of the Gryphon and Apex and Commander. And I want to swear. It was really good. It was really good.
No bad words.
Yeah, no bad words. Just expressive words. Yeah, if I had a more expressive vocabulary. Then it was bloody good. It was that then followed by the Macintosh Sonus Faber room, and then maybe the Magico room was kind of on a par with that. I had the MBL room. I wasn't overly impressed with that. I had a bit of unique problem, I guess I had personally with Munich. After a while, hearing all those big systems, I got kind of like almost like subwoofer fatigue.
Yeah.
You'd hear this kind of like tone that was coming from big, perhaps slightly overdialed subwoofers. So stuff like the MBLs had their massive subwoofers, all the kind of big Boulder and whatever there is. I can't remember.
It's a bit overwhelming, isn't it? Yeah.
It just became this like common artifact applied to the sound, the music, that you'd walk into a room and immediately I'd go, bloody more of that. I think what it is, it's not a big problem. It's just one of those problems that, a bit like if somebody points out a problem, like in a photo or something, or perhaps, your favorite guitar and you see a ding.
Yeah.
Oh my God, or your car even, you see that ding.
Yeah,
and you can't, every time you look at that car, all you see is the tiny weeny little ding.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing. It was just like, you hear that fault And then it was a continuous problem in all of the rooms. And it's actually one of the things that going off on another wild tangent. But it's another problem that I try and combat in design of home cinema and stuff like that.
It's important.
Yeah.
All of that is important. I mean, you get the room right.
Yeah. But it's a subwoofer problem as well. It's like you need to tread subwoofer really carefully and really well, which I was touching on really with what you were saying about the kind of integration. It needs to be subtle. Yeah. Definitely less is more.
Yeah.
Unless that subwoofer is capable of more is more. Yeah. But that's a rare breed, and generally it's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's absolutely huge. Yeah. Generally, if it falls into that category.
Yeah, completely. So we used Gryphon Commander and Apex monos at the Ascot show. Yes. Along with the Marten.
I somehow missed that room entirely. I don't know how.
It was the sound of the show, everyone was saying. So, which again was lovely.
Yeah.
We had one of our guys came in who sells our product, who's a very, very difficult person to please. The way he sets up a system is up there. And he's in one of the shops that you'd expect that from. Yeah. But he could be quite blunt with his opinion on the presentation.
As long as you're friendly with people, it's good to be, I think, because it's feedback. Yeah.
He walked in, listened to it for 2 or 3 minutes, came back out and went, "That's incredible. I need some of these in my shop." So something we're hopefully working on. But it's the feedback from the general public at the show around the Gryphon and Marten combination was stunning. Yeah. It was, everyone was very taken with the system. But again, it was a sizable investment. Yeah. The speakers were £110,000. The preamp power's best part of $250,000. It's up there.
It's big money, isn't it?
We've got our cables and sources, etc.
Yeah, I would say I only have a handful of clients that could stretch to it. I mean, it's a big handful of clients, but I mean, then they'd have to want to as well. They'd have to do that rather than they might not have to choose, but it's the equivalent of a flat for their kids in a premium London location or something, isn't it?
It is. I mean, everyone has different levels of what they would invest in a hi-fi system or an AV system, for instance.
I'm big with John Darko on this, though, that some people don't drive. And the cost of cars these days, with a brand new Golf is probably, 30, I'm probably going to try not to exaggerate, but probably 35 grand upwards. Yeah. Half decent Golf is probably pushing 50 to 70 grand or something like that. So if you don't have that, and then the running costs of a car and the whopping depreciation of eventually going to zero on a car, whereas most of this stuff doesn't drop below about 40% or something. No. So it's something that you can own, like a watch perhaps or something like that you can always see some of your money back from. So it may seem extravagant as a lay person to spend your expendable income on 40, 50, 100,000 pounds worth of electronics, but it's not as stupid as going and buying a Porsche. It really isn't. A Porsche is a perfectly acceptable and, if anything, glorified purchase where everyone goes, "Wow, you did that," whereas the instinct with a hi-fi is to go, "You what?"
I think things with a hi-fi, it's an investment that you're going to spend more time in front of than behind the wheel of your Porsche.
Yes. 100%. I say it's a few, and also it's enjoyable. Most of the time you're behind the wheel of your Porsche, you're stuck in traffic. Yeah. And you want to get home.
And you can go 70 miles an hour, of course.
100%. But ultimately you're trying to get out of it as fast as you can. I know there will be Sundays, trips, things like that where the opposite is true, but most of the time when you're driving a car, you want it to end.
I think that
it's the polar opposite. I run out of time with my hi-fi every single night. Yeah.
Oh, got to get bed.
Well, like we were coming here, we put this in. So I guess actually, bringing this around to another thing I want to talk about is effectively it's almost like a first impression, first review of the Marten Parker Duo Diamonds. The reference system we have for clarity is the Inuus ZNG with a mono Tambaki as the front end. And at the press of a button, that is also a Grim MU2 running into the Macintosh MA12000. The Dyne Audio Heritage Specials, and for the boring amongst us, is that offensive? It's Townsend cabling, Chord Company cabling. So it's the Fractal F1 when it's the Townsend speaker cables, and XLR from the Tambaki, and it is the Chord Company Epic interconnects and network cables and USB cables and what have you in there. So it's either Epic, which I feel is kind of the sweet spot with Chord versus the top end stuff with the Townsend. So maybe a little unfair there, but either way, two amazing digital front ends, decent Macintosh analog front end. The initial impressions above the Dyne Audios were way more mid-range presence and detail. No downsides, everything else was very even compared to the Dyne Audios.
They're a brilliant speaker. For value for money wise and everything else, I think they are brilliant. And that system shows them at their best.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. The bass was, it's a relatively small room, again, for sort of clarity, but it is treated down to try and help with even the 40 hertz, because there's a huge 40 hertz room mode in there. So the acoustics I designed into there were, bear in mind it's a small room to start with, the depths were calculated that anywhere I was applying acoustic treatment, it would have at least an impact on 40 hertz. So the front wall was kind of, I think it worked out as about 10 inches, which does virtually nothing for 40 hertz, but it does do something. It's like a couple of percent, of absorption. So it's helping, but the corners are way deep. They're, depending on which way you measure through the triangle, you could be measuring over a meter, but even on the shallowest depth, it's something like 65 centimeters deep or something. So it really is a lot of treatment in a small area to try and do that. So the problem with the room is you get this kind of like bass boom in inverted commas. There was none of that with those Martins, and they're bigger than the Dyne Audios. So you would like to think they're shifting more air. However they're shifting it, it's in a very controlled manner. That's the initial impression. It's as extended, if not more extended than the Dyne Audio, perhaps leaner at the same time, i.e. kind of perhaps more, horrible word, transparent, more detail, more. I think definitely more detail in the mid-range. The treble's no more recessed. Obviously, if something's more forward, something has to be more recessed. But it's not like there's no loss of treble. It effectively is a positive first impression. Unfortunately, probably an expensive first impression.
I can't repeat your first words when you said about it.
Yeah. So
I think that the Diamond, it's two very different loudspeaker designs.
Prices as well.
Very different price points. So I think those Dyne Audios are something very special.
Yeah, they have a special quality about them, and I hate the phrase, like competes against products way better. But I think all that means is there are products that are more expensive than the Dyne Audio that in my system, in my room, would not generate a better result.
No.
But that would be perhaps because it forces more out of that 40 hertz problem, means I can't open the door. It means the kids have no space to play. Or they're just big in your face, and that's not the aesthetic you need to relax to. Whatever it is, there's plenty of products that are more expensive than the Dyne Audios that mean the Dyne Audio is a better product for me in that environment, or for clients coming to listen in that environment.
That's equally as important. The performance is important, the visual side of things is very important. But equally how it fits into the room and if it's into your lifestyle, all those things need to be taken into consideration.
The joy of ownership on balance, aren't they? And I'd say the other first initial impression is, compared to something like the Sonos Faber Canaries, the downside to those is if you give them a hell of a lot of sub bass, and I mean a hell of a lot, which I do occasionally, but more often than I'd probably admit, you can get a bit of port trapping, and they can bottom out. Because they do reproduce, they do go down low. And to most people's listening volumes, amplifier powers, musical tastes, they would never discover that.
No.
It was purely when I was, giving it some that I noticed. You just get like a bit of turbulence on the port, and you can hear that from the listening position. But it's occasional, and it's in exceptional circumstances. So I think what I'm getting at here with those Martins is I feel like they are a bigger speaker than something like the Sonos Faber. In the same way the Dyne Audio kind of is in its performance envelope, its horsepower, if you like. So I've got a funny feeling I'm going to enjoy them. I don't think I'm going to find a limit to them.
No, I think we'll enjoy
it's going to just be a taste thing beyond the basics.
Completely. I mean, I think I've had them at home for the last couple of weeks, which I'm quite upset to leave them with you. But I've, as you know, I've got quite a busy household with my children, stepchildren, and my stepdaughter. She's she loves music, always listening to music through AirPods or phone. and I put her in front of those, and I used the Gryphon, the smaller Diablo, the 120.
Okay, yeah.
And just on a sideboard, so it wasn't even set up on proper stand spikes, etc., etc. It was just I was just trying
bookshelf speaker.
I just limited for space, and I was actually doing some other work at the time.
But that's the reality, though. And a lot of the time, you are fitting this into joinery or something like that. So it is important that a speaker can, to some degree, still perform when it's not fully isolated.
Yeah. And I got Bella to pick a few tracks, and the reaction from her was great, because from her perspective, it wasn't just, it's music, it's my song I like. Went, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that we need to educate as an industry, of how good something can sound. You have the music, you have the music of your lifetime, and then you have the soundtrack of your life. That's two different things.
Yeah.
There's music of all, you know what bands and what songs have been out through your period of life.
Yeah.
And there's another line of all the ones you liked.
Yes.
And all of those will stir up various different emotional experiences, where there's some happy, some sad, whatever it may be. And to me, the beauty of a good, well set up system is being able to engage in those tracks where they mean something.
100%. Yes.
And you connect with it.
Yeah, it's taken me, well, what have I been going now, 22 years or something, or 23 years.
32.
I wish I was, it's taken me this long to actually be honest with clients. And by that, I mean, I've always been hyper honest, to a fault probably as a salesman. If I've been working for other people, probably hated me for it really, but I would just literally explain all the differences of everything and just give everybody the choice, which is still exactly what I do. But what I'd always do is try and find the value proposition for people. And in a stupid way, I've actually hidden the true value of this stuff from people, because what I've been trying to do is get them to get as far as they can without spending more money than they, in inverted commas, have to.
Yeah.
And what that then means is they don't spend their money like I do, and they don't get that joy that I do, because I spend every last penny I've got on this stuff. And it means I get as far down the hobby as absolutely humanly possible. And I get those moments where I'm literally crying, listening to music late at night by myself.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably good. And by being somehow like afraid to tell the client about the really expensive stuff, because I feel like maybe they think I'm after their money, or I'm trying to get a big sale out of them. I've always tried to, like I said, trade that value proposition where well, you can get 90% of it for 50% of the money. And I think as you're not a hobbyist, maybe that suits you. But what I've realized now is you don't have to be a hobbyist to get that reaction. Like your kids, they're not hobbyists, they just get the reaction. And so now I'm kind of like, I will unashamedly put the really expensive stuff in front of people and tell, and like this, I'm choosing to spend. I know it's the business's money, but I'm a small business. Ultimately, it's my money. I could put it in a pension if I didn't put it in dem stock. Say dem stock. My hi-fi. It's there though to demonstrate the hobby to other people, and that's why it's such an important decision for me, because it is my one chance to show people what I see in hi-fi. And not everyone actively listens. Some people don't listen in. You have to perhaps almost encourage that sometimes. But I'd say for anybody who naturally actively listens, the hobby's astonishing, and it's my one shot to do that. So that's why the room's done how it is. The room is designed nicely. It's a lovely place to be. And the music sounds incredible in there. And and what I'm noticing is all the different products now, the differences between them are huge. And like you heard, when we switched between the Grim MU2 and the Inuus and the Mola, which like this and the MA12000, they're very comparable products. 18,000 versus probably 20 something. Get a bit more functionality maybe with the Grim MU2, which makes it a bit like the MA12000, I suppose. A slightly cheaper individual product. So there's a bit more of a skew in price perhaps. But either way, both incredibly high-end purchases. The difference is marked. It's huge. And my take on this is a relatively new understanding, but I go back to Jesko, because Insider, and he's talking about, in mastering suite situations when you've got good systems, bad systems, good rooms, bad rooms. It's like drawing two dots on a rubber band, and they're the differences in a given room. And a good room kind of stretches the elastic band to move those points further away. So you still have the same scale of an elastic band in the difference when you change a knob or a product or anything like that.
Yeah.
But you can now see the difference between those dots much more clearly. And I can demonstrate cables, like all the weird little tweaks that people say. I honestly, if you can't hear them, so be it. But I would Pepsi challenge people.
I think there's
to not hear it.
So I've had a background of selling cables, and obviously very aware of the opinions that are out there.
Mention in the comments, by the way. Have a good old algorithm. Exciting. Comment section about cables or no cables, please.
The cables are better than ones you don't have. So pass the signal to start off with. But no, I think the simplest way to understand what a difference is so you have your speakers marked out on the floor as to where they sound the best. Do something simple, like put a couple of 2p coins under one speaker so it's not physically set properly. It's got ability to wobble, or push them right back against the wall, take them out of position, or turn one point away.
Speaker position.
So when you listen to it, it sounds rubbish.
You
then put it back into where it should be, and you'll hear the benefits different straight away. That gets your mind understanding what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, what you like, what you don't like, and cables and all the other bits and pieces like that. That is the way to start the reference of listening. And there's definitely like again, this dumbs it down, but like a tone control element with cabling, whereby you can emphasize a certain bit of the frequency spectrum with a different cable. For sure, those chord epics have a little bit like those Parker Duos, a little bit of a presence region thing versus the Townsend, which is perhaps more even-handed, but maybe as a bass region thing. I don't know. But you can clearly hear the difference, and if a system is maybe lacking or has too much of something, you can use that cable to kind of tailor the system. There's definitely better cables and worse cables, like we were saying earlier, but once you get to a handful of good cables, you can use them to salt and pepper to taste. It's absolutely. They're really cool. Absolutely.
Right, so I think we've probably rambled more than enough for one episode, but it's been great to have you, Matt.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for coming, and I think you know already, but for the viewer's sake, I'm inviting Matt back so that I can effectively do a review of the 333 and do it to Matt's face. So he gets that. Shall I be blunt like the other guy?
Go for it.
I think I'd like to be honest. So you'll soon find out whether I am however many thousands of pounds poorer in a few months' time. But before you go, Matt, I just thought I might start, which could easily get edited out, a quick fire.
Oh dear.
Fun and games. It's really probably not that fun, but it seemed it at the time. List of questions. So, analog or digital?
Digital, because of the flexibility.
Good answer. Bookshelf or floor stander?
Bookshelf. Love a two-way speaker.
Yeah. I haven't found a floor stander yet in a small, normal-sized room.
Sonos Faber Maxima Amateur.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Two-way floor stander.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant, lovely. Lovely speaker. Sorry.
Right, yeah, but it's bookshelf, so you can't have that. Solid state or tube?
Solid state.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Mac or Gryphon?
Oh, that's horrible.
That's deliberate.
I love them both. I'm afraid I can't.
No, you got to choose. It's gun to your head.
Gryphon.
Yeah, there you go. Electronic music or guitars and bands?
Electronic.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Birthday or Christmas?
Oh, birthday.
Selfish.
I don't really know why.
Hidden home or audio tea? You don't have to answer that one. There you go. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, enough of that. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.
See you guys next time.
Thank you.